The lights dim, the stage glows, and there she is, Dolly Parton, larger than life, sparkling in rhinestones, her blonde wig perfectly set, her smile dazzling an audience that stretches as far as the eye can see. To millions, she has always been an embodiment of glamour, wit, and boundless energy, a star who seems untouched by time, unshaken by hardship, forever glowing in the spotlight. But what if that brilliance was only half the truth? Imagine Dolly away from the stage, sitting quietly in the Tennessee mountains she once called home, stripped of the sequins, the laughter, and the wigs. What if, in that silence, she revealed a side of herself the world rarely saw, vulnerable, conflicted, even fragile? For more than 30 years, Dolly Parton carried two lives side by side. One was the icon, the queen of country, adored by fans, worshipped by critics, a songwriter whose words cut deep into the soul of America. The other was a woman wrestling with her own insecurities, secrets, and scars, some physical, some emotional, that she carefully hid beneath her persona. The contrast is stark. On one hand, Dolly crafted an image so consistent and perfect that it became her armor, her shield against the scrutiny of fame. On the other, she lived a life full of quiet doubts, private struggles, and choices that would shape her legacy in ways the public never fully understood. And that is the story we are about to uncover. Over the course of this journey, we'll trace Dolly's path from a poor Tennessee girl with a dream to one of the most enduring icons of American music. We'll explore how she built her persona, why she felt she could never abandon it, and the rumors and controversies that swirled around the hidden Dolly. We'll look into her private life, her long but secretive marriage to Carl Dean, the health challenges she rarely spoke about, the regrets she has only admitted later in life, and the myths she sometimes allowed to linger. Most importantly, we'll ask, what happens when a person and the persona finally meet? This is not just a story of country music's brightest star. It's the story of a woman who lived two lives in plain sight, and of how both of them, Dolly the icon and Dolly the woman, are essential to understanding her legacy. Dolly Rebecca Parton was born on January 19, 1946, in a one-room cabin along the Little Pigeon River in Sevier County, Tennessee. She was the fourth of 12 children born to Robert Lee Parton, a hard-working but cash-strapped tobacco farmer, and Avi Lee Parton, who kept the household together with faith, music, and love despite never-ending poverty. Dolly has often joked that her family was dirt poor, but she never spoke of it with shame. Instead, she described those years as formative, the very foundation of her resilience and creativity. The Parton home was crowded, chaotic, and sometimes lacking in food or shoes, but was also filled with music. Avi Lee sang old mountain ballads to her children, and Dolly absorbed the rhythms of gospel and Appalachian folk from the moment she could remember. Even as a child, Dolly stood out. Her voice carried a power beyond her years, and her confidence made people stop and listen. At just 6 years old, she was already singing in church, and by age 7, she was crafting her own songs on a homemade guitar fashioned out of an old mandolin and wires pulled from the family screen door. By the time she was 8, she had received her first real guitar from a relative, and her path seemed clear. Music wasn't a hobby for Dolly. It was her way out, her chance to transform not only her life, but the life of her family. Her uncle, Bill Owens, recognized her raw talent early on and became instrumental in guiding her career. He took her to perform at local radio stations in Knoxville, where her high, lilting voice quickly caught attention. At just 10 years old, Dolly was performing on local television and radio shows, and by 13, she had recorded her first single, Puppy Love, and even performed at the Grand Ole Opry. It was during this appearance that Johnny Cash, already a star himself, introduced her to the audience, predicting that she had a big future ahead. His words planted a seed in Dolly's heart that only grew stronger. She could not only dream of Nashville, she could belong there. After graduating high school in 1964, Dolly wasted no time. The very next morning, she left her small town behind and boarded a bus to Nashville. She carried nothing but her suitcase, her guitar, and a determination that burned brighter than the lights she imagined on Music Row. The move was not glamorous. Dolly struggled to find her footing in a city overflowing with talent. At first, she wrote songs for other performers, penning hits for artists like Hank Williams Jr. and Skeeter Davis. Songwriting paid the bills, But Dolly knew she was meant for more than working behind scenes. She wanted her name on the records, her face on the stage, her voice leading the song. What set Dolly apart, even in those early days, was her sense of identity. Many young singers arrived in Nashville hoping to be molded into whatever the industry demanded. But Dolly began crafting her persona almost immediately. She leaned into her mountain roots, celebrating her rural upbringing rather than hiding it. At the same time, she began to experiment with an image that was bold, flamboyant, and unapologetically feminine. Even when critics mocked her for her flashy clothes, teased her accent, or dismissed her as too much, Dolly stood firm. She once said she modeled her look after the town tramp she admired as a little girl, with high heels, tight skirts, and bright lipstick. To others, it was scandalous. To Dolly, it was empowerment, a way to own her identity in a world eager to pigeonhole her. This contrast between Dolly's humble, barefoot beginnings in Tennessee and the larger-than-life persona she was building in Nashville marked the start of what would later become her double life. On one side, she remained deeply connected to her family, her faith, and the simple values she had grown up with. On the other, she was crafting a character for the world to see. Dolly Parton, the sparkling, witty, rhinestone-studded performer. This early balancing act laid the groundwork for everything that followed. Beneath the wigs and sequins was always a little girl from Sevier County who believed music could take her anywhere. And as Nashville slowly began to take notice, Dolly's journey from poverty to possibility was only just beginning. By the mid-1960s, Dolly Parton had already proven herself as a promising young songwriter in Nashville. But 1967 marked the beginning of her true emergence as a star in her own right. That year, she released her debut studio album, Hello, I'm Dolly, a record that showcased not only her powerful soprano voice, but also her songwriting skills. The album produced several hits, including Dumb Blonde, which was particularly ironic, considering Dolly's later reputation for poking fun at herself with blonde jokes. Written by Curly Putman, the song hit the top 40 on the country charts and immediately positioned Dolly as a woman who could take control of her image. While others may have dismissed her as naive or ornamental, the lyrics declared otherwise. Just because I'm blonde, don't think I'm dumb. For Dolly, it was more than a catchy tune. It was a statement. She could look glamorous, even exaggerated, but beneath the surface she was sharp, ambitious, and firmly in charge of her destiny. That first record caught the industry's attention and led to her joining Porter Wagoner's television show in 1967, a move that would launch her into national stardom. For 7 years, Dolly was Wagoner's duet partner, appearing weekly in front of millions of viewers. While she became widely loved for her harmonies and witty banter, she also used the platform to hone her solo career. By the time she left the show in 1974, Dolly had racked up multiple hits and was ready to stand completely on her own. Part of what made Dolly unforgettable was her deliberate cultivation of a visual identity. From the start, she rejected the Nashville norm of subtle, conservative presentation. Instead, she built her persona on big wigs, glittering rhinestones, and skin-tight dresses, a look that became her trademark. Over the decades, her longtime creative director Steve Summers would refine this into a signature style that blended country kitsch with Hollywood glamour. Summers helped design many of her iconic stage costumes, balancing camp and elegance while ensuring Dolly's look was instantly recognizable. The towering blonde wigs, sparkling gowns, and playful accessories weren't just for show. They created a visual brand that made Dolly stand out in an industry filled with traditional, often understated performers. In a world where authenticity was often equated with simplicity, Dolly dared to be different, proving that style could be both art and armor. But it was her songwriting that solidified her status as one of the greatest artists of her generation. Over the years, she wrote more than 3,000 songs, many of which became timeless classics. Coat of Many Colors, 1971, told the story of her childhood poverty, turning a simple garment sewn from rags into a symbol of love, resilience, and pride. Jolene, 1973, with its haunting plea to a beautiful rival, showcased Dolly's gift for universal storytelling in just a few lines. Then came I Will Always Love You, 1974, a heartfelt farewell written for Porter Wagoner as she left the show, which would later become one of the most successful love songs of all time after Whitney Houston's legendary 1992 cover. By 1980, Dolly had extended her reach into mainstream pop culture with 9 to 5, the working woman's anthem that became not only a hit song, but also the title track to a film in which she starred alongside Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin. What made these songs endure was their honesty. Dolly's music drew directly from her life experiences, translating hardship, longing, and determination into lyrics that spoke to millions. And yet, even as her songs revealed her heart, her public persona often distracted from the woman behind them. Dolly herself acknowledged this tension. In interviews, she has said, "I look one way and I am another." She has described her stage identity as an alter ego, a larger-than-life version of herself that gave her the confidence to stand before crowds without fear. The wigs and rhinestones, she explained, were like a suit of armor. They protected the shy, self-conscious girl from Sevier County who still lived inside her. This divergence between Dolly the performer and Dolly the person became one of the defining features of her career. To the world, she was witty, flamboyant, and endlessly cheerful. In private, she was thoughtful, often insecure, and more introverted than her public appearances suggested. Yet the two Dollys weren't contradictions. They were complements. The persona allowed the private woman to survive the pressures of fame, and the private woman gave persona authenticity and heart. Together, they created the double life that would fascinate fans for decades. By the time the 1970s closed, Dolly had secured her place as a superstar. She had proven she could dominate country music while crossing over into pop, all without sacrificing the unique image she had carefully built. The rise of Dolly wasn't just about chart-topping records. It was about constructing a persona so vivid, so enduring, that it became inseparable from her identity. And though it sometimes obscured the vulnerable person beneath, it was this balance, the real Dolly and the rhinestone Dolly, that propelled her into legend. For as long as Dolly Parton has been in the public eye, she has been wrapped in mystery. Behind the dazzling smile and flamboyant persona, rumors and myths have followed her like a shadow. Some of them Dolly has laughed off, some she has carefully dodged, and others she has eventually admitted with a wink and a smile. Together, these stories help create the sense that there were two Dollys, the one who sparkled in rhinestones under the spotlight, and another who existed behind the curtain, guarded, private, and endlessly intriguing. One of the longest-running rumors surrounds her husband, Carl Thomas Dean. Dolly married Carl in 1966, long before she became a household name. But to this day, very few people have ever seen them together. In fact, Dean has been so private that some fans have even questioned whether he exists at all. While Dolly built an empire on being accessible and larger than life, Carl avoided the spotlight completely, running an asphalt paving business, and living a life worlds apart from Hollywood or Nashville. Dolly has explained many times that Carl simply isn't interested in fame. He rarely attends her shows, never walks red carpets, and prefers to keep their relationship between the two of them. For decades, this fueled speculation. Was Dolly secretly single? Was their marriage a front? Or had she created a phantom husband to shield her private life? The truth, as Dolly insists, is simpler. Carl Dean is real, very real, but fiercely private. Their marriage has endured nearly 60 years, precisely because they allowed it to exist outside of the circus of show business. Another myth clung to Dolly for years: her tattoos. Fans noticed that she almost always wore long sleeves on stage, even in hot weather, sparking whispers that she was hiding something. Some believe her arms were covered in elaborate tattoos, a secret she didn't want the world to see. Eventually, Dolly confirmed there was truth to the story, but not in the way people imagined. She admitted to having some tattoos, delicate pastel-colored designs that she used to cover scarring from medical procedures. Far from being wild or rebellious, her ink was personal, practical, and gentle, much like the private Dolly herself. Yet because she left the details vague, the rumors kept swirling, adding another layer of mystique to her image. Then there's a legendary songwriting tale that Dolly wrote both Jolene and I Will Always Love You on the very same day. The story has been repeated so often that it became accepted as fact, a testament to Dolly's genius. Imagine penning two of the greatest songs in country music history in a single burst of inspiration. While Dolly has said the songs were indeed written close together, She later clarified that they may not have been composed in the exact same day. Still, she allowed the myth to live on, because it captured something true about her creative spirit. Her ability to channel life's emotions into timeless music at a breathtaking pace. Whispers about Dolly's relationships have also fed the narrative of her shadow life. For decades, speculation has circled around her longtime friend and assistant, Judy Ogle. Judy has been by Dolly's side for more than 50 years, traveling with her, working with her, and supporting her behind the scenes. Their closeness sparked rumors of a romantic relationship, whispers that Dolly is faced with grace and humor. She has consistently denied the claims, explaining that Judy is like a sister to her, a confidant, and one of the most important people in her life. Dolly once quipped that people will gossip no matter what you do, so she might as well give them something to talk about. Her refusal to confirm or deny every rumor only deepened the sense that the real Dolly was something the public would never fully grasp. These myths, Carl's near invisibility, the secret tattoos, the songwriting legend, and the whispers about Judy Ogle, all contribute to the idea of a hidden Dolly that exists just beyond reach. They blur the line between fact and fantasy, leaving fans to wonder how much of the Dolly they see is real, and how much is carefully crafted illusion. And perhaps that is exactly the way she wants it. Dolly has built her career on balance, revealing just enough to keep people close, but holding back enough to protect the core of her private life. The result is a mystique that has kept her fascinating for more than half a century. The Shadow Dolly is not about deception. It's about survival. In a world that demands celebrities bare their souls, Dolly has found a way to maintain control, allowing rumors to swirl, while keeping her truth intact. Every myth adds another layer of intrigue, another sparkle to her larger-than-life persona, while shielding the vulnerable woman beneath. And in the end, perhaps the greatest secret of all is that the mystery itself has become part of her legacy. Dolly Parton has always said that her public image is only one part of who she is. To truly understand her, you have to step away from the rhinestones and into the quiet corners of her private life, a place where few outsiders have ever been invited. It begins with Carl Dean, the man she married in 1966, and has kept mostly in the shadows ever since. Dolly met Carl when she was just 18, on her first day in Nashville. She had gone to a laundromat, and outside stood a young man who couldn't take his eyes off her. Carl later joked that the moment he saw her, he knew he was going to marry her. 2 years later, they wed in a small, private ceremony in Georgia, with only her mother as witness. Unlike so many Hollywood love stories, theirs was never built for display. While Dolly embraced the limelight, Carl wanted nothing to do with it. He stayed home, far from cameras and microphones, and let Dolly shine alone. In fact, Carl has almost never attended her performances or public appearances. This unusual arrangement puzzled outsiders, fueling speculation and rumors, but for Dolly, it was the key to their marriage's longevity. By separating her home life from her public life, she preserved something sacred and real in a world that devours intimacy. But Dolly's private life has not been free from challenges. Behind the glamour, she endured serious health struggles that tested her strength. In the 1980s, she faced a series of medical problems that left her with scars she carefully concealed. This was one reason why long sleeves became part of her signature look. She didn't want fans to see the marks left behind. Over the years, she also underwent surgeries, some necessary and some elective, to maintain her health and her appearance. To many, her ever youthful looks became a subject of fascination, but for Dolly, it was about more than vanity. She has admitted that her wigs, makeup, and costumes act like armor, a way of protecting the shy, insecure girl inside from the world's judgment. The sparkle was not just for the audience. It was for herself, a shield against vulnerability. One of the most painful aspects of Dolly's private journey was her decision not to have children. For many years, she imagined a family of her own, but health issues intervened. Dolly was diagnosed with endometriosis, a condition that causes severe pain and complications, and eventually underwent a partial hysterectomy in the 1980s. It was a devastating moment that closed the door on motherhood. She later admitted that she sank into a deep depression during that time, questioning her purpose and wondering what her life would look like without children. Dolly has often said she poured her maternal instincts into her music, her philanthropy, and the countless children she has supported through her Imagination Library program, which provides free books to millions of kids around the world. Still, the absence of children remained a quiet sorrow in her private life. In recent years, she has expressed both peace and regret. Peace in knowing she had other ways to nurture, and regret in moments when she imagined what it would have been like to see her and Carl's children grow. Beneath her sparkling exterior, Dolly has admitted to carrying deep insecurities. She once confessed that she worried people would never love her for who she really was. Growing up poor, teased for her appearance and accent, she feared that the world would only accept her if she transformed herself into someone else. This fear became one of the driving forces behind the Dolly persona. By exaggerating her looks, bigger hair, brighter makeup, flashier clothes, she took control of the narrative. Instead of being mocked, she owned the joke, often saying with a grin, "It takes a lot of money to look this cheap." But behind the humor was a serious truth. The wigs and rhinestones weren't just costume. They were her shield. They allowed her to step into the spotlight with confidence, while protecting the tender heart that still worried she might never be truly accepted. This delicate balance between vulnerability and strength, regret and resilience, defined Dolly's private life. Her marriage to Carl gave her stability. Her health struggles gave her perspective. Her loss of children gave her a new mission. And her insecurities fueled her drive to keep reinventing herself. The woman behind the curtain was not so different from the one on stage, but she was quieter, more fragile, and more human than most people realized. In guarding the side of herself so carefully, Dolly managed to keep something rare and precious in the world of celebrity, a private life that was her own. And though she often let the public see only the sparkle, it was a struggle she kept hidden that gave her shine its depth. Every larger-than-life star eventually faces a moment when the mask slips, and for Dolly Parton those moments were both surprising and disarming. For decades she had built the Dolly persona, flamboyant wigs, glittering gowns, razor-sharp humor, as a way to control how the world saw her. Yet even she admitted in interviews and in collections of her words, like Dolly on Dolly, that the woman under all that sparkle was not the same as the image on stage. "I look one way and I am another," she once said bluntly. "There's a great difference between Dolly Parton the person and the Dolly character I created." That honesty was her way of peeling back the glitter to reveal the human being inside. Sometimes the breakthrough came when Dolly herself chose to be vulnerable. She has acknowledged that the stage persona was armor, but it was not impenetrable. When asked about her insecurities, she admitted she had often worried she wasn't pretty enough, smart enough, or even lovable without the wigs and makeup. These were not the kind of revelations fans expected from the endlessly cheerful star, but they gave a rare glimpse into fragile heart that powered her confidence. For someone whose brand was rooted in over-the-top glamour, simply confessing her fears of being unloved was one of the most authentic and human moments of her career. Other times, the veil slipped because the world demanded answers. Rumors about her marriage, for instance, swirled for years. Did Carl Dean even exist? Why did no one ever see him? Dolly eventually addressed these whispers directly, acknowledging that Carl was real but private, and that their unusual arrangement worked for them. She even joked that the secrecy kept their marriage interesting. The confirmation didn't satisfy everyone, but for many it was a shock, a revelation that Dolly, the most open and accessible of celebrities, could keep something so central to her life hidden in plain sight. Then there were the persistent whispers about tattoos. For years, fans speculated that Dolly always wore long sleeves to cover colorful ink. She eventually admitted that she did, in fact, have tattoos, but not in the way people imagined. They were small, pastel designs, flowers, ribbons, little bows, ink to cover scars from medical procedures. Her honesty startled fans because it reframed the rumor. It wasn't about Dolly secretly rebelling with wild body art, but about her quietly dealing with pain and healing in a way that made sense to her. In that revelation, the unglamorous truth of scars and surgeries slipped through her glittering facade. Moments like these punctured the myth and reminded people that the Dolly persona was only half the story. Sometimes, those glimpses came not through direct confession, but through how she carried herself. After her partial hysterectomy in the 1980s, Dolly fell into a deep depression, And although she kept much of the struggle private, hints emerged in her appearance and her music. Fans have sensed a shift in tone, a heaviness beneath the usual sparkle. Later, when she spoke openly about those years, it shocked many who had assumed she was untouchable. Even small admissions became seismic in the eyes of the public. The acknowledgement that she and Carl had never had children, and her candid reflections on regret and sadness over it, humanized her in ways rhinestones never could. Her humor, her sharp self-awareness, and her refusal to deny her pain turned those revelations into moments of connection. Dolly's ability to balance vulnerability with strength, making fans laugh while also telling them she had scars, regrets, and insecurities, was a breakthrough in itself. For decades, the persona of Dolly sparkled so brightly it was easy to believe she was invincible. But the real breakthroughs came when Dolly let us see the shadows behind the shine, the scars beneath the sleeves, the solitude of her marriage, the weariness that sometimes followed her laughter. Each revelation, whether intentional or accidental, reminded the world that she wasn't just an icon. She was a woman living a double life, juggling public perfection with private truth. And far from diminishing her legend, those glimpses made her more powerful, more relatable, and more enduring. In her later years, Dolly Parton has become a master of balance, walking the tightrope between the dazzling persona she created and the authentic, grounded woman behind it. The wigs are still towering, the gowns still glitter, and her one-liners are as sharp as ever. But Dolly has also begun allowing more of her true self to show. The cultural landscape has shifted too. Audiences now crave authenticity as much as glamour, and Dolly has leaned into this change without ever abandoning the Dolly that made her famous. Instead of dismantling the persona, she's woven it together with honesty, giving the world both halves of her life at once. Her interviews, memoirs, and appearances in documentaries have revealed more of the private woman than she ever allowed in the height of her fame. Where she once brushed off questions with jokes or evasions, she now answers with a candor that surprises people. She has spoken openly about her health struggles, her decision not to have children, her long marriage to Carl, and the insecurities that fueled her larger-than-life image. By embracing honesty without sacrificing sparkle, Dolly has reframed her persona, not as a mask she hides behind, but as a part of her story that exists alongside her vulnerabilities. Fans no longer see the double life as a contradiction. They see it as proof of her complexity. The response has been overwhelmingly positive. Rather than shattering the image of Dolly, her openness has made her more beloved. The revelation of her scars, her regrets, and her private struggles resonates deeply in a culture where celebrities often try to appear flawless. Dolly's willingness to admit she is not perfect only enhances her relatability. She embodies resilience, not by pretending everything has always been easy, but by showing how she carried on despite pain and disappointment. Her candidness about Carl's absence from the spotlight, about her tattoos covering scars, and about her regrets over lost time in her personal life has drawn fans closer, not pushed them away. Even so, Dolly has expressed that the balance hasn't always been easy. In reflective moments, she has admitted regrets, particularly about the toll her work took on her marriage. She has said she wished she had slowed down more often, spent more quiet time with Carl, and given herself room to breathe. These confessions are striking because they come from a woman who spent her life racing forward, building an empire of music, film, business ventures, and philanthropy. To hear Dolly speak of wishing for stillness is a reminder that even legends long for the ordinary joys they sacrificed along the way. And yet, the very act of admitting those regrets is part of her reintegration. Dolly no longer hides behind the perfect mask. She still sparkles, yes, but she is unafraid to reveal the shadows too. Today, when she steps onto a stage or sits down for an interview, audiences understand they're seeing both Dolly the icon and Dolly the woman. The persona and the person have fused, not into one, but into a coexistence that feels authentic. Fans no longer question which is real, because they recognize that both sides are. This is how Dolly Parton lives her double life now. Not as two separate worlds, but as one story told in harmony. The wigs and rhinestones remain, symbols of her creativity and control. The honesty and vulnerability remain too, symbols of her humanity. And together, they ensure that Dolly's legacy is not just one of stardom, but resilience, honesty, and a rare kind of authenticity that grows more powerful with time. Her journey shows that reintegration is not about choosing between the mask and the truth. It's about finding the courage to wear both. Why would someone as universally adored as Dolly Parton feel the need to live two lives, one public, one private, for more than half a century? The answer lies in the deep psychological tug-of-war she has acknowledged throughout her career. Dolly herself has confessed that much of her stage persona was born out of fear. The fear that she would not be loved as she revealed a real Dolly underneath. As she put in candid interviews, "I look one way and I am another." The wigs, rhinestones, and endless sparkle were not only a performance. They were a shield, a way of building a larger-than-life version of herself that no one could tear down. This carefully constructed image protected the shy, insecure girl who grew up in poverty and worried she would never measure up. The pressures of show business only amplified this need for protection. Dolly came of age in the 1960s and 70s, a time when the country music industry demanded marketable perfection, especially from women. Female performers were expected to appear glamorous yet wholesome, approachable yet untouchable. Dolly, ever savvy, leaned into this with gusto. She exaggerated her look to the point where it became her signature. Big hair, bright lips, tight clothes, transforming the scrutiny into strength. By going over the top, she controlled the narrative. Instead of being laughed at for being cheap or gaudy, she made the joke herself, famously quipping, "It takes a lot of money to look this cheap." Beneath the humor was a serious survival strategy. In a male-dominated industry where women were constantly judged, Dolly's persona was her armor. Gender expectations played an especially heavy role in shaping her double life. As a woman in country music, Dolly was constantly expected to be polished and perfect, while her male peers were allowed to appear rugged, unvarnished, even flawed. To remain at the top, Dolly had to embody an impossible balance. Glamorous but grounded, sexy but respectable, bold but likable. The pressure to be flawless fed her insecurities, reinforcing belief that the real Dolly, the girl from Sevier County with scars, doubts, and ordinary struggles, might never be fully accepted. At the same time, her faith and rural roots added another layer of complexity. Dolly has always spoken openly about her Christian beliefs, crediting her faith as a guiding force in her life. Yet there was tension in reconciling her spiritual values with the glitzy, materialistic persona she presented on stage. Her humble upbringing in the Smoky Mountains, where her family had almost nothing, stayed with her too. She has often said she never forgot where she came from, even when she was draped in sequins. That contrast between the humble, devout girl from Tennessee and the superstar who could outshine anyone in Nashville or Hollywood was not a contradiction to her, but a duality she carried every day. Her faith kept her grounded, her persona kept her protected, and the push and pull between the two defined her journey. Ultimately, Dolly's double life can be understood as both a necessity and a choice. The necessity came from the demands of her industry, the scrutiny of gender roles, and the insecurities she carried from childhood. The choice came from her unmatched cleverness. She knew that building Dolly the icon would not only protect her heart, but also secure her success. In that sense, the double life was her greatest act of artistry, a psychological balancing act that turned survival into stardom. Today, when Dolly admits that she feared rejection or confesses that her glitter was really armor, she gives voice to what so many performers feel, but rarely say. Her double life was not a sign of weakness, but of resilience. It allowed her to be both the woman she was and the legend she became. And perhaps that is the truest measure of Dolly Parton's genius. She didn't just survive the contradictions of fame, gender, and identity. She turned them into her legacy. Dolly Parton's legacy has never been just about the music, the wigs, or the rhinestones. It lies in the way she managed to hold two truths at once: the dazzling, invincible star who lit up the stage, and the private woman who carried insecurities, health battles, regrets, and unfulfilled dreams. Understanding this double life adds an entirely new layer of depth to her body of work. Songs like Coat of Many Colors resonate more when you know her real childhood of poverty and shame. Jolene becomes not just a catchy tune, but a reflection of vulnerability and jealousy that Dolly herself was never too proud to admit. Even her empowerment anthem 9 to 5 carries weight, when you see it as part of her ongoing struggle to navigate a male-dominated world while building an image strong enough to survive in it. When you realize that the sparkle on stage was partly a shield, every lyric about heartbreak, endurance, or longing hits differently. It comes from someone who lived those contradictions every day. Her influence on future artists is immeasurable. Dolly's ability to balance myth and authenticity paved the way for countless performers who followed. She showed that you could create a persona to protect yourself, to entertain, and to endure, while still letting pieces of your true self shine through. Younger artists, from country stars like Casey Musgraves to pop icons like Miley Cyrus, her goddaughter, have taken notes from Dolly's playbook, blending spectacle with honesty, humor with vulnerability. By admitting her struggles, Dolly gave permission for others to do the same, proving that imperfection doesn't diminish stardom, it strengthens it. At the same time, Dolly's life highlights the double-edged value of myth. Her persona made her iconic. The wigs, the sparkle, the exaggerated Dolly were what set her apart, what made her larger than life and unforgettable. But the cost was real. Decades of hiding scars, doubts, and regrets, of fear and rejection, as she showed her unvarnished self. The myth elevated her to legend, but also left her carrying a weight that only she knew. That tension between the freedom of being adored and the burden of maintaining the mask is central to her story. And yet, Dolly has shown us that it is possible to live with both. Her journey is not about choosing between image and authenticity, but about learning to carry them together. From her, we learn that self-acceptance doesn't mean abandoning the sparkle. It means admitting that the sparkle is part of the armor, and the armor was built because the person underneath needed it. We learn that vulnerability, when shared, doesn't diminish greatness. It enhances it. And we learn that legacy is not about appearing flawless, but about leaving behind truths that others can recognize in themselves. Dolly Parton's double life does not tarnish her image. It defines it. She is proof that even legends are human, and that their humanity is what makes them timeless. Her songs, her persona, and her revelations all weave into one lesson. You can be larger than life and still be real. You can sparkle in the spotlight and still carry shadows. And sometimes, it's the shadows that make the light unforgettable. Dolly Parton's story is not just a tale of a country superstar. It's the story of a woman who lived two overlapping lives. For decades, she dazzled the world with wigs, rhinestones, and quick wit, carefully maintaining the image of a larger-than-life icon. Behind that persona, though, was another Dolly, private, vulnerable, carrying scars both physical and emotional. For nearly 30 years, she upheld this balance, navigating rumors about her marriage, her body, her friendships, while revealing only what she chose to share. It was a double life, but not one of deception. Rather, it was her way of surviving in an industry and a culture that demanded perfection. Now, as she reflects on her journey with greater honesty, more pieces of the real Dolly are coming into view. She has spoken candidly about her health struggles, her regrets about not slowing down with Carl, her quiet sorrow over not having children, and her insecurities that fueled the persona she built. These revelations don't weaken her image. They make it stronger, showing humanity behind the glitter. Dolly's greatest artistry wasn't just in her songs or her performances, but in her ability to balance these two lives and allow both to shape her legacy. And perhaps her story leaves us with a deeper reflection. What masks do we all wear? How much of our public selves, whether online, at work, or among friends, are carefully crafted personas designed to protect the more fragile parts of who we are? Dolly's double life is extreme, but in many ways, it's universal. In the end, her journey is not about hiding. It's about courage. The courage to create a persona bold enough to survive fame, and the courage to later reveal the vulnerable person behind it. Dolly Parton's story is one of survival, strength, and artistry. It's proof that you can be both the icon and the human being, both the sparkle and the scars. And in embracing both, Dolly didn't just build a career. She built a legacy.